is question 15 and 16. This is from SAT number 15 from October 2018. And let's jump in. So 15 says, based on the passage, how would the author likely characterize many attempts to improve traffic? So because this is a paired question, 15 and 16, the best way to solve it is going to be to go through the answer choices, 16, A, B, C, D. And for each one of these, we're going to look for how would the author most likely characterize many attempts to improve traffic, right? So any comment that the author makes about these attempts, that could be a good answer choice. So let's start. So 8 to 13 says, here, that means that a new transit system has to be backed up by something that impels complementary reductions in car use, say the physical elimination of traffic lanes, etc. So here, we don't see anything directly about other alternatives, right, or any interventions meant to reduce traffic. All this is basically saying is that a new transit system has to be backed up by these types of interventions, right? The physical elimination of traffic lanes. It doesn't really give us an example of what the consequences or what he thinks about these other interventions. So it's not a good answer choice. Also, again, we're not doing this all in sequence. This is sort of an isolated question, but I think the last 3 questions before this, or 4 questions before this, all kind of refer to this first paragraph. And typically we move down in linear order. So at this point, I'm already starting to think we're probably not going to have another question that's making use of this introductory paragraph, and we're going to do something later. Not perfect, but just sort of an instinct that can help guide us. So 21, 25, we're in the second paragraph. It starts to seem like better territory. So that tolerance has grown in recent decades, and not just in the United States, but it isn't unlimited. And even people who don't seem to mind spending half the day in the car eventually reach a point where finally enough is enough. This is our second text here. We should kind of check to make sure, right? Check our references of that tolerance. And the tolerance is the tolerance of commuters for long, annoying commutes. So basically what this sentence is saying is that this tolerance for commute time, right? So driving really, really far, it isn't unlimited. And there is a point when people are just like, this is enough. We're not going to move any farther from the city because the traffic is too much to drive to work. Doesn't really talk about what we need, right? It doesn't talk about attempts to improve traffic. It just makes it okay, so this is question 15 and 16, and this is from the SAT number 15 for the October 2018 test. And let's dive in. So 15 says, based on the passage, how would the author most likely characterize many attempts to improve traffic? And we should notice that this is a paired question, which means that the way to solve it is to start with the question from 15 and then go through the answer choices for 16, A, B, C, D. And the question asks, what does the author think about attempts to improve traffic? So what we need to do is look through the answer choices for 16 and look for any text that talks about what the author thinks about other attempts to improve traffic. So let's start with lines 8 to 13. 8 to 13 says here, that means that a new transit system has to be backed up by something that impels complementary reductions in car use, say the physical elimination of traffic lanes or the conversion of existing roadways into bikes or bus lanes, ideally in combination with higher fuel taxes, parking fees, and tolls. Basically, what this guy is saying is that if you're introducing a new transit system, it's not enough to introduce that. You also have to introduce what it says complementary reductions, which basically means you need to make driving more annoying. You need to make it less convenient, less easy, more annoying. But this isn't a really good answer choice because this doesn't directly tell us about what the author thinks about other attempts to reduce traffic. All he's really saying is that if you want to reduce traffic, you need to combine a new transit system with these other complementary reductions. But it's not a really good answer choice for answering what we want, right? About characterizing other attempts to improve traffic. We want something a little stronger. Moreover, we're not doing these all in sequence, but the last 3, I think, or 4 questions all reference this first paragraph. And text after this. And so it's not a perfect rule, but we should expect that at this point, we're going to start moving beyond this first paragraph into sort of the second paragraph. And that is the case. So A is probably not very good. So B says lines 21 through 25. Here, that tolerance has grown in recent decades, and not just in the United States, but it isn't unlimited. And even people who don't seem to mind spending half the day in a car eventually reach a point where finally enough is enough. This answer choice is also not very good, not very strong, because all this text does is talk about people's tolerance for commuting, right? That's what that tolerance refers to. It refers to the tolerance of commuters for long and long commutes. And basically what these lines are saying is that people have a limit on how far they're willing to drive to commute, and there's a point where enough is enough. But again, this doesn't talk to us about attempts to improve traffic. It just talks about people's opinions and perspective on commuting. So we can get rid of that one as well. I expect it's not to be our answer. 29 through 38 starts here, and it says, if in a misguided effort to do something of environmental value, municipalities take steps that make long-distance car travel, car commuting faster or more convenient by adding lanes, bypasses. We get this long list of examples here. We actually make the sprawl problem worse by indirectly encouraging people to still live, etc. We need to go to worse. So this is a very long text, right? It spans many, many lines, but it actually seems pretty good. It starts by saying, if in a misguided effort to do what? To do something of environmental value, municipalities take steps that do what? Make long distance car commuting faster or more convenient. So this right here very closely matches this. Attempts to improve traffic, really closely matches efforts to make long distance car commuting faster and more convenient. And then we get this long list of examples, adding lanes, reducing tollbooths, whatever, all these lists of examples. And that his point is says that we actually make the sprawl problem worse. So this could be a good text, so we should keep this one for sure. D says 59 to 62, which says moving drivers out of cars and into other forms of transportation can have the same effect. If existing traffic ends up in service, road space begets use. So same effect, what are we talking about? We're talking about widening roads makes traffic move faster, but eventually attracts additional drivers, and moving drivers out of cars and into other forms of transportation can have the same effect. This text also, in some ways, does talk about attempts to improve traffic, right? It talks specifically about one attempt, which is moving drivers out of cars, and talks about sort of the negative consequence of that. But in comparison to this text, it's really just not as strong. This one very clearly talks about efforts to make travel, to reduce traffic, and it also gives just these like 5 or 6 different examples of those efforts. This one here only talks about maybe one example. It's also later in the text, right? We made a big jump from the first paragraph down to almost the end. So it's less likely, it's sort of separated from the rest of the answer choices. So for that reason, you can pretty much just say C is more and more likely to be our answer choice. And when we read C again, what it tells us about these efforts to make long distance car commuting faster is that they actually make the sprawl problem worse, right? So they actually make the problem worse. And up here, he describes them as being a misguided effort to do something of environmental value. So we go up to this text here. A says they are doomed to fail, as most people like driving too much to change their habits. So this right here is going to be wrong for a number of reasons. One, doomed to fail. Very strong, very negative claim. Usually, we almost always avoid that. You can almost eliminate it just based on that. Moreover, it's just wrong because the author doesn't think that most people are, they like driving too much to change their habits, which says if you do a number of tweaks, you make driving a little less convenient, you make public transportation more convenient, that people will change their habits. So that's not a good answer choice. B, they overestimate how tolerant people are of long commutes. Now, he does talk about people's tolerance for commutes, but he doesn't really connect people's misguided efforts or their attempts to improve traffic. He doesn't connect it to people's overestimation of how tolerant people are. In fact, he kind of thinks that maybe what they do is he just doesn't connect it to that claim at all. It's sort of a separate claim that he's making. So it's not going to be, they are well intentioned then, but ultimately lead to environmental harm, right? And this one does match. They're well-intentioned means that um, they're misguided up here, right? Within a misguided attempt to do something with environmental value. Well-intentioned, but they make things worse. They actually make the sprawl problem worse. For that reason, this is a really good answer choice. C should work. He says they will only work if they make driving more economical and productive. And this is not a point that the author makes in a passage or in any of the text. Instead, what he says is they will only really work if you make driving less convenient and less enjoyable, not more economical and productive. We can eliminate B. That leaves us an answer choice C, question 15, and answer choice T for question 16.